Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be looking at the government really trying to use the private sector as a drive for economic reform. Now, we will be focusing on that tonight, and we'll also be focusing on the role of artificial intelligence and technology to really enhance the private sector. But before we start doing that, let's check out a few of the main stories making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who today hailed the efforts exerted by the Egyptian national institutions to face ongoing challenges resulting from successive regional and international crises. The president further expressed his appreciation to the armed forces' sacrifices in carrying out all duties being entrusted with, aiming to preserve the nation and safeguarding its national security. This came during President al-Sisi's meeting with Minister of Defense and Military Production Mohammed Zaki, Armed Forces Chief of Staff Osama Askar, and senior military leaders at the strategic headquarters in the new administrative capital. The meeting tackled a number of files and issues related to activities, duties, and tasks being implemented by the armed forces to maintain the state's capabilities and protect its strategic interests. It also explored the latest developments at regional and international levels, as well as its repercussions and impacts on the Egyptian national security, in addition to Egypt's efforts and positions which consolidate the Palestinian people, lightening the deteriorating humanitarian situations inside the besieged Palestinian enclave of Gaza. Egypt has undertaken such efforts in coordination with national institutions and friendly countries. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry delivered Egypt's speech before the 55th round of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva today. Addressing participants, the top diplomat stressed on the necessity of reaching a ceasefire in Gaza and condemned Israeli breaches of international law in the Palestinian enclave. Shoukry further warned against any military operation in the Palestinian city of Rafah. The minister said the extreme polarization exposed by the Gaza war had laid bare the double standards of some members of the UN's top rights body. He said Egypt has been keen on allowing the flow of aid to Gaza through the Rafah crossing since the start of the crisis. Shoukry said Cairo was continuing with efforts to release prisoners and hostages in Gaza. And on the sidelines of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, Foreign Minister Shoukry held talks with his Iranian counterpart, Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, on Tuesday. During their meeting, the two ministers discussed the war in Gaza and threat of the conflict spreading into the region. The talks also focused on means of boosting bilateral relations in light of the directives of President al-Sisi and his Iranian counterpart, Ebrahim Raisi, after their meeting on the sidelines of the Arab Summit held in Riyadh last November. And Minister of International Cooperation, Rania Mashad, visited the headquarters of the European Investment Bank in Luxembourg and met with EIB President Nadia Calvino. Minister Mashad and Calvino discussed EIB's support for business sustainability, food security, public health, green hydrogen and water investment across Egypt and the situation in the Middle East. The minister described EIB as Egypt's largest partner to the private sector between 2020 and 2023, as the EIB is expanding its Cairo regional hub. For her part, Calvino highlighted Egypt as the EIB's largest country of operation outside of Europe. And Mashad's visit to the EIB's headquarters was an opportunity to discuss the bank's financial and technical support for priority investment that improves economic opportunities for society, address challenges posed by climate change. These were some of the main stories making the news today, but now turning our attention to tonight's topic. Let's check out this report regarding the government partnering up with the private sector as a way out for the economic development. Let's check it out and we'll be right back.
Believing that achieving sustainable development goals and Egypt's Vision 2030 makes collective work among all concerned parties a necessity that cannot be overlooked and a mechanism that must be maximized. Ministry of Planning and Economic Development launched the Partnerships for Development platform. This platform is designed to serve as a channel of communication between government, private sector and civil society in order to achieve more concerted and coordinated efforts to achieve sustainable development goals in Egypt in all its governorates. The platform aims to effectively monitor and document all development efforts at the national and local levels, in addition to involving the concerned parties and development partners in the decision-making process and creating a supportive environment that maximizes results of the contributions of development partners and aims to provide support to make efforts made more effective. The Ministry of Planning and Economic Development aims through sustainable development partnerships at the local level platform to enhance the role of private sector organizations and civil society in sustainable development processes at the local level, with the aim of implementing Egypt's Vision 2030, achieving international sustainable development goals and supporting the presidential initiative to develop Egyptian countryside. Decent life. The platform targets civil society organizations, in particular local and international NGOs and private sector institutions from companies, non-profit associations, banks and universities, by creating a channel to enhance, coordinate their participation, integrate their contributions from existing or proposed projects and initiatives, and facilitate the process of communication between the ministry and local actors. In development at the local level, focusing on the following areas: economic development through job creation and vocational training, green economy, support policies, economic empowerment of women within the framework of the Egyptian Family Development Strategy 2021-2023. Egypt Vision 2030 focuses on improving the quality of life of Egyptian citizens and improving standard of living in various aspects of life through mainstreaming principles of justice, social integration, and the participation of all citizens in political and social life.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and joining us here tonight in the studio is Dr. Nevine Makram Labib, the Director of the Social and Cultural Planning Center at the National Planning Institute. Dr. Labib, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for the invitation to join.
Always a pleasure, Doctor.
Thank you.
Now, talking about the private sector, there's been a lot of emphasis regarding how the private sector will be the locomotive really for the Egyptian economy out of the current economic crises that are hitting the whole world, including Egypt. And now the private sector is involved with about 60% of the Egyptian economy, and they're looking to expand it to reach 90% by the year 2030. Everybody understands the importance of the private sector, and we're starting to see good examples of how such projects and companies within the private sector playing a bigger role within the Egyptian economy, but it's still not enough. Now, outside of the traditional understanding of how a project or a business should be run. Now, technology and artificial intelligence is really the new code or the new language being used for such for the private sector in general. Now, how can we make or have a bigger role of artificial intelligence in the private sector in the sense of actually reaching out and exporting this domestic local industries and our domestic private sector into the international world, the international community? Now, the first thing that comes to mind is the services sector, providing your own private company providing services. So how do we actually make use of AI and technology in order to provide domestic local services abroad, exporting it?
Actually, if we tackle the artificial intelligence from a data perspective, then it can be very useful in this domain, because we need to do the decision-making process, but based on the data. So in order to do so, we need to gather data, whether we're talking about Egypt or about any external data. We're talking about other countries, it's a worldwide issue. And then after collecting these data, we can do some analytics using artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, and then provide some patterns to the decision makers so that they can focus on which services are needed. And here we should focus on the customer himself or herself. That's a very important issue, because sometimes we provide some services and we work on some projects that are very good projects, but that are not really customer-centric, as we say. So a data that should be collected, some data items that should be collected, should be related to the needs and the requirements of our community. Which services are really required, which services are needed, in which governorates, and so on, so as to guide and direct the private sector in these projects.
Well, if we're talking about collecting data to help customize the products according to the customers, be it in Egypt or outside of Egypt. Now, that's mainly research and development work. Did we adopt or implementing artificial intelligence enough really to help customize products for local customers and international ones as well?
Okay, again, a very tough question. No, it's not enough, because we need more data. We're talking about data collection. If we do not have the data, then we cannot run analytics in a proper way. And we still have some noisy data, some, let's say, not accurate data, not updated. So we need more data, we need more regulations to help us, and maybe we need some new algorithm to work on these data. So it's not enough to now.
Well, do you feel that this is the responsibility of the businessmen, the investors themselves, or is it something that the government should adapt? Because still a lot of people are still thinking in the traditional sense of holding or creating or establishing a business and a product. Is it adapted and embraced by the government and the investors alike?
It's kind of a shared responsibility, in my opinion, because the government should provide us with the requirements and should allow us to access the data, and then the private sector should work on it. So it is a shared responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of the public or the government or the private sector.
Well, if instead of being in our own bubble, if we look at other countries, I mean, the US is already dependent on the private sector and SMEs. 90% of the economy is driven by small and medium enterprises and the private sector, obviously. And I mean, what is the benchmark? Who should we look at and really set the tone and set the standards that we aim to reach, be it in the Arab world or Africa or the international community at large?
I think we should focus on similar countries, such as, for example, Morocco and Tunisia and so on, because we cannot compare to UAE or to the States or to Europe. We have different factors. So I guess that maybe Morocco is one of the most common factors We have common factors with them.
Yes. Well, when we talk about products, we always talk about tangible products, actual products, and maybe services provided. Now, using artificial intelligence and technology to help add value to the products, is it easier to add products to tangible products or services?
Definitely, the tangible products are much easier. When we tackle services, it's different, because here we're talking about education, we're talking about healthcare services, and so on, and that's very difficult to assess. Definitely, there are some ways to assess these services, but it's not easy. Whenever you tackle intangible things, then it's not easy.
Dr. Labib, now, when we talk about technology and artificial intelligence and how we really should be implementing it, still we have areas in the country that does not enjoy Wi-Fi connection well enough or fast enough, and still some projects or some projects actually in some industries are very primitive in nature. How can we help transform the private sector and these industries to be able to cope with preliminary stages of artificial intelligence and technology?
Okay, that's a very crucial point, because there are some requirements. In order to be able to apply and to implement technologies, there are some requirements that should be met first, such as the IT infrastructure, the internet access, the equipment, the mindset, again, the regulations, the governance, and so on. If these factors are not there, then you cannot have any success stories.
Well, we do have a lot of specialized technological universities, and we are building for the future, but is it are we moving fast enough? Because by the time we witness generations who have studied artificial intelligence or ICT, we will be still lagging behind.
We have some talented people, but we still need more, especially that we need more people that are into data science, for example, into data analytics, into AI, into robotics, people that can work in the smart cities, and so on. So we need to focus more on the capacity building. Although we have many initiatives, as we all know, but we still need more people.
When we talk about the private sector, a big part of it is foreign investment coming to the country. Now, you spoke about the infrastructure. Whenever a foreign investor is going to come or establish a company or a factory, they will want to have certain technological infrastructure available. And we've seen the country working on a lot of infrastructure projects over the past few years. Are we ready to host such investors with a certain level of projects and maybe big businesses?
I believe we're still facing many challenges in this area. So we need to focus on the requirements of the investors themselves. Again, applying data analytics. So we need to know what they really want, what they require from us, so as to be ready for their investment projects, or else they will not come to invest in our country.
Well, I don't want to talk about shortcuts, but how can we, talking about, I'm not going to get into investment laws or anything, but how fast can we actually implement a proper technological infrastructure for foreign investors to come and invest here in Egypt?
It depends on many factors, and it depends on the location itself. So it cannot be a generic answer to give to you how fast and how many months or years and so on. But it all depends on many factors. Is the budget there? What about the environmental factors? Who is going to implement? Are we talking about the private sector again, or are we talking about the government, and so on? So there are many factors that will contribute to the answer to this question.
Well, Egypt is, we've been talking about sustainability and sustainable development and business sustainability. How much of the artificial intelligence role crucial, how crucial is it for the sustainability of businesses here in Egypt? Because we've seen a lot of SMEs and a lot of entrepreneurs really starting their dreams and their projects and their companies, but soon enough, or sooner or later, they actually, these projects fail and these companies are bankrupt. So how crucial is it for AI and the National Planning Institute to help emerging companies?
Again, we should provide these people with some patterns. And again, we're talking about the data analytics and the data science. So in order to be able to make the business sustainable, you should have some predictions. So again, we should collect data, whether we're talking about internally, that means in Egypt, or externally, because definitely there are many external factors that affect the sustainability of the business. And then we should do some diagnostics, getting to know, are they doing well or not? Do they need to provide other services? Do they have any challenges to face, and so on? And then having some predictions. We call this the predictive analytics. And with the prediction, we have whether the good scenarios or, let's say, the bad ones. And then knowing that we'll be facing challenges, we should be ready, we should be proactive. And then we have the prescriptive. So we have kind of a prescription, kind of guidelines, so as to help and to support the businesses to be sustainable. Or else it will not be sustainable, even if it starts as a success story. And that's what we've been witnessing lately.
Well, what are usually the main challenges being faced? I mean, are they bureaucratic challenges? Are they challenges in the actual ideas and the customizations of the services and products?
Maybe sometimes they are external challenges. So it's not always their fault, let's say, but sometimes there are some external factors that lead to, facing many challenges in the businesses and not being able to maintain the business. But we should focus on the factors that are under our control. So we should study the market and see whether, for example, we'll have many competitors. And what if we face these competitors? How are we going to deal with it? And again, here we talk about the competitive intelligence. Being ready to deal with our competitors, especially that nowadays we're not only talking about local competitors, we're talking about competition worldwide. So that makes things, again, more difficult, especially for startups.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, to overcome these challenges, one of the ways is actually boosting the private sector, and that's why Egypt has, and the government has, picked the private sector as being the main drive for economic recovery. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egypt's private sector is poised to drive economic recovery and foster growth in the country throughout 2024. Minister of Finance Mohammed Maid expected the economy would significantly improve the upcoming fiscal year 2024-2025. The minister said that those projections stem from the private sector's pivotal role in supporting economic growth and the government's concerted efforts to create a favorable environment for both local and foreign private investments. According to Maid, the government has implemented various incentives to support production expansion and exports to attract more investments and bolster the role of the private sector. His statements align with the government's plan to promote the private sector's participation and increase its contribution to the national economy from the current 30% to 65% in the coming years. The government has taken substantial measures in recent months to bolster private entrepreneurship, ensuring equitable treatment between public and private sectors, while enhancing the overall investment climate in the country. Egypt has already secured $2.1 billion in concessional financing for the private sector from international partners since the beginning of 2023. According to the Minister of International Cooperation, Rania Al-Mashat. Additionally, the Public-Private Partnerships Committee has approved partnerships between 4 state-owned development projects and the private sector, along with 17 other infrastructure projects offered for PPPs. Furthermore, the government launched its initial public offering IPO program intending to offer 35 state-owned companies to strategic investors by the end of June 2024, as outlined in the state's ownership policy document. A list of 32 companies was initially released in February, with 3 additional companies, namely Eastern Company, Allies Dekhila and Telecom Egypt, being added later in 2023. The country aims to enhance its exports, thereby attracting more foreign currency, which has been in short supply since outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war. As part of the state's interest in the private sector's participation in accelerating the wheel of economic growth, revitalizing markets, ambitious targets have been adopted for private investment to reach about 600 billion Egyptian pounds in 2023-2024 at a rate of approximately 36% of the total targeted investments, compared to an expected percentage in 2022-2024.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Labib. Doctor, now, when we talk about predictive analytics and data, now, we can predict a lot of scenarios for a business and a lot of scenarios for a path where a product should take. But what about unforeseen circumstances like pandemics or conflicts within the region? Does AI provide any sort of predictability for crises, man-made crises or natural disasters or catastrophes? How do we actually move around this? Because you might set up a good business with a good plan and a good vision, and then all hell breaks loose and you don't know exactly where to go.
Definitely you can make use of AI for crisis management, because with AI you have some predictive, again, patterns. And then when you have predictive patterns, then you're aware that there will be some disasters, there will be some pandemics, there will be some political issues that might affect your business, and then you're ready for it. So you can do it, and it's doable already, and you have many applications that are making use of AI so as to predict the crisis, and again to provide you with some prescription, how you're going to deal with it. What about plan B? You definitely should have a plan B whenever you have a project and you plan for it. There is even the risk component. So the risk management component, you make kind of an assessment for the potential risks that might happen, and then the possibility of these risks, whether it's moderate, it's high, or it's a low possibility, and then you go for the plan B. So you're ready. For example, if you have a pandemic, then you will go for online, you'll go for telecommuting, you'll go for many other strategies that are already applicable. If you have issues with some other countries, then you should have a plan B, so as to get your supplies from different countries, and so on. So it's already applied.
Well, Dr. Labib, now talking about customizing products or customizing services, do you feel that it is a good idea for startups or small and medium enterprises really, or maybe even large companies or big multinationals to really try and collect data for outside of Egypt in order to customize products and services that would be exported outside of Egypt, or would it be easier to focus on the Egyptian market?
It depends on the industry sector. So again, you should study the market, whether you're talking local market or international market, and then study the gaps. So if you know the gaps, then you will be able to customize your product, whether it's goods or services, so as to fit.
Yes.
Whether it's talking about Egypt or about any other country, or having kind of support in any other country, in any other community. So again, it's studying the market. It all gets around the data.
Well, what about talking I mean, if we look at the private sector, how it's actually moving forward, do you feel that with applying artificial intelligence within the private sector, do you feel that it is something that Egypt really, I mean, the traditional sectors, talking about agriculture or education or health sector, do you feel that these are the safest bets to have right now? As in, for many years now, we've been talking about SMEs, how they should be the main drive for the Egyptian economy. And a lot of entrepreneurs really did invest their capital in their own projects. However, the economic situation now is much more difficult than it was a few years ago. Do you feel young entrepreneurs or the youth are encouraged to actually put their money and their capital into their own projects?
Yes, because now they have the support of the government. Whether we're talking about initiatives that are providing them with some financial support from other businessmen, or that are providing them with some soft skills and helping them to market their products, or even helping with some expertise so as to discuss and identify the gaps and see if really they should work on a different sector, such as healthcare and education, especially that these are the priorities in our country. So I see that although the market is getting very difficult, they're having more support than it used to be.
Well, do you feel such initiatives such as Mashruak or your project, £200 million, they lent £200 million to over 800 projects, 800 SMEs. Do you feel that this is a modest number? Do you feel that maybe we should lend more, or maybe this is actually higher than what we already expected or want for the private sector and the SMEs in specific?
No, it's not very modest, but maybe we should focus more on providing them with the expertise. This will be more helpful for them, especially we're talking about the startups. So it's not about money, it's about having new ideas and dealing with these ideas and then having new products. Maybe that's we need more. And then in our community now, we do accept to have some novel ideas. That was not the case. We really were into the traditional ways, but now we are welcoming and we are encouraging our youth to have new projects. So maybe that's the support that we should provide to them.
Do you feel that we should, I mean, does the National Planning Institute encourage more incubators, having more bigger companies, multinationals adopting some of these projects, some of these SMEs in order to help them stand on their own feet? Or is the economic situation too tough or too tight for multinationals to have enough space and money and finances and take bigger risks for incubating SMEs?
Well, actually, the Institute of National Planning is tackling the problem from maybe a more comprehensive way, because we're kind of a think tank that are working on research papers and research projects and policy papers, so as to provide some data and some insights, more than data, insights to the decision makers and the policy makers in each and every governorate and each and every ministry. So we're talking here high level. However, we're providing some diplomas, whether we're talking academic diplomas or training diplomas in sustainable development. We're specialized in sustainable development, and that's very important. Again, the capacity building, how we can help to explain to the youth or even to the people, I mean, to our community, what sustainable development is, how they can sustain their work, their products, their projects, and so on. So that's our role as an institute.
And did the challenges for the institute differ now from, let's say, 6 months ago?
Not really, because it's the same vision and the same mission and the same objectives. But maybe now we have more tools. Now we're making more use of the artificial intelligence, and we have a center for the data analytics. So we're making more use of the emerging technologies.
But there's also more economic problems,
yes, definitely. But the AI can help.
Yes.
I believe that the AI can help.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is no way around it. AI, artificial intelligence, and the application of information technology is integral for the private sector, especially SMEs. That's one or maybe the main way out of an economic difficulty. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank Dr. Nevine Makram Labib, the Director of the Social and Cultural Planning Center at the National Planning Institute. Dr. Labib, always a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Henia Saif. Thank you for joining us.